The Vorthak were known throughout the galaxy as the perfect killing machines. 8 feet tall with razor-sharp claws, armored skin that could deflect energy weapons, and reflexes so fast they could catch bullets mid-flight. Their warrior culture had dominated star systems for over 1,000 years, and no species had ever successfully challenged their military might. They showed no mercy in battle, took no prisoners, and their very name made entire civilizations surrender without a fight. Yet despite their fearsome reputation, the Vorthak had one critical weakness that threatened their entire species. They were terrible parents. Vorthak adults were so focused on warfare and conquest that they had no patience for the slow, careful work of raising children. Their young were dying at alarming rates, not from disease or accident, but from neglect and the harsh military training that began almost from birth. The species was facing extinction not from external enemies, but from their own inability to nurture the next generation. So when they encountered humans, a species they could easily crush, the Vorthak made the most shocking decision in their history. They decided to trust these small, seemingly weak creatures with their most precious treasure. Their children, General Krixtal, stood in the observation deck of the Vorthak dreadnought Death's Edge, watching the small blue planet called Earth spin slowly in the void. His 4 arms were crossed behind his back, each hand resting on a different weapon. His dark purple skin bore the ritual scars of 100 victories, and his yellow eyes could track the movement of individual ships in the human fleet below. The humans had no idea how easily he could destroy them. Their weapons were like toys compared to Vorthak technology. Their ships were slow and clumsy. Their bodies were so fragile that a single blow from his clawed hand could kill them instantly. But Krixtal wasn't here to conquer Earth. He was here to beg. "General," said his aide, Subcommander ZFRA, approaching cautiously. Even among the Vorthak, Krixtal was known for his unpredictable temper. "The human delegation is ready to meet with you." Krixtal nodded without turning around. "Are the young ones prepared for transport?" "Yes, sir. All 50 juveniles are in the secure pods, as you ordered." 50 young Vorthak, the last surviving children from their most recent hatching cycle. Out of nearly 300 eggs, only these 50 had made it past their first year. The rest had died during the traditional combat training that was supposed to make them strong. "And the other war leaders still oppose this plan?" Krixtal asked. ZFRA hesitated. War leader Grokma calls it the ultimate disgrace. He says trusting our young to aliens shows weakness that will destroy our reputation across the galaxy. Krixtal's claws extended slightly, a sign of controlled anger. Grokma has sired 12 broods in his lifetime. Do you know how many of his offspring survived to adulthood? No, sir. 3. Out of nearly 200 children, only 3 lived long enough to become warriors. Krixtal finally turned to face his aide. "Tell me, ZFRA, what is more disgraceful? Asking for help, or watching your entire species die out because you're too proud to admit you need it?" Before ZFRA could answer, the communications officer called out from across the bridge. "General, the humans are transmitting. They're ready for the meeting." Krixtal straightened his armor and checked his weapons one final time. This was the most important negotiation in Vorthak history, and also the most humiliating. The galaxy's most feared warriors were about to admit they couldn't take care of their own children. "Beam me down," he ordered. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the middle of the Earth Alliance conference room, trying not to show how nervous she was. Around the table sat the most important human leaders, military commanders, diplomats, scientists, and child development experts. Through the large windows, they could see the massive Vorthak warship hanging in Earth's orbit like a dark moon. Everyone knew the Vorthak could destroy human civilization in a matter of hours if they wanted to. Their technology was centuries ahead of Earth's, and their warriors were legendary throughout the galaxy. So when they had requested a meeting to discuss matters of mutual benefit, Earth's leaders had agreed immediately, hoping to avoid a war they couldn't possibly win. What none of them had expected was the strange message that came with the meeting request. "We wish to discuss the care and education of our young." A shimmer of light appeared in the center of the room, and suddenly General Krixtal was standing there. Elena had seen pictures and videos of Vorthak warriors, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. He was enormous, over 8 feet tall and built like a living tank. His armored skin looked like it could stop bullets, and the weapons on his belt could probably level city blocks. But what struck Elena most was his eyes. She had expected to see coldness, cruelty, the gaze of a perfect killer. Instead, she saw something that looked almost like sadness. "I am General Krixtal of the Vortak Empire," he said, his voice deep and rumbling. "I thank you for agreeing to this meeting." General Morrison, Earth's military representative, stood up slowly. "We're honored by your visit, General. Though I admit we're curious about why the galaxy's most powerful warriors want to discuss childcare with us." Krixtal was quiet for a long moment. Elena could see him struggling with something, pride, maybe, or shame. "My species is dying," he said finally. The room went silent. Elena felt her heart skip a beat. The Vortak were dying? How was that possible? "Not from disease," Krixtal continued. "Not from war or disaster. We are dying because we have forgotten how to raise our young." He gestured, and a holographic display appeared showing Vortak population statistics. Elena gasped when she saw the numbers. 300 years ago, 70% of our children survived to adulthood, Krixtal explained. 100 years ago, it was 40%. Today, it is less than 15%. Dr. Sarah Chun, Earth's leading child psychologist, leaned forward. "What's causing such high mortality rates?" Krixtal's 4 hands clenched into fists. "Our own traditions. We believe that only the strongest deserve to survive, so we begin combat training when our young are barely out of their shells. We expose them to dangers that are meant to make them tough. We show no affection or gentleness, believing it will make them weak." Elena began to understand. "You're not losing children to natural causes. You're losing them because your culture treats children like tiny soldiers instead of developing beings who need care and nurturing." "Exactly," Krixtal said, and Elena heard real pain in his voice. "For 1,000 years, this approach worked because we had large populations and many eggs. Losing 60 or 70% of our young was acceptable if the survivors became the galaxy's fiercest warriors. But now your population is too small to sustain those losses," General Morrison finished. Krixtal nodded. "Within 50 years, there will be no more Vortak. We will have bred ourselves into extinction through our own cruelty to our children." Dr. Chun asked the obvious question. "Why don't you just change your child-rearing practices?" Krixtal's laugh was bitter. "Because we don't know how. For over a millennium, we have selected for adults who are perfect warriors but terrible nurturers. We literally don't know how to be gentle with our young. When we try, we become frustrated and angry. When they cry or need comfort, we see it as weakness that must be crushed." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. An entire species had bred the capacity for parental love and patience right out of themselves. "But you've observed human child-rearing practices," she said, beginning to see where this was leading. "Yes," Krixtal confirmed. "For the past year, we have been studying your species. You are physically weak, technologically primitive, and would be easy for us to conquer. But you have one ability that we lack. You know how to keep your young alive and help them grow into healthy adults." He brought up new statistics showing human child survival rates, educational outcomes, and psychological development markers. 98% of your children survive to adulthood," he said with something like awe in his voice. "They learn, they grow, they become capable adults without losing their empathy or ability to form bonds. You have what we need most desperately, the knowledge of how to nurture the next generation." Elena exchanged glances with her colleagues around the table. This was unlike any first contact scenario anyone had ever imagined. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked carefully. Krixtal straightened, and Elena could see how much this cost him. For a proud warrior race, what he was about to say must have felt like the ultimate defeat. "I am asking if humans would be willing to raise our children," he said. The room erupted. Several military officials started speaking at once, while the diplomats looked stunned. Dr. Chun was furiously taking notes, and General Morrison looked like he wasn't sure if this was a trap or a miracle. "You want us to adopt Vortak children?" Elena asked over the noise. Not adopt, Crixtal clarified. Raise them until they reach maturity, then return them to us as healthy adults who can continue our species. We would provide everything needed for their care. Resources, technology, whatever you require. But they're Vorthack, General Morrison pointed out. They'll grow up to be 8-foot-tall warriors with claws and armor-plated skin. Even as children, they'll be stronger and more dangerous than adult humans. Crixtal nodded. This is true, but they will also be children who need love, guidance, and patience to grow properly. These are things we cannot provide, but you can. Dr. Chun leaned forward. How do we know they won't hurt the humans caring for them? Not intentionally, but just through their natural development. Young Vorthack are not naturally violent, Crixtal replied. The aggression you see in adult Vorthack is trained into us from childhood. Our young, if raised with gentleness, remain gentle. They only become dangerous if they are taught to be. Elena felt her mind racing. This was simultaneously the most terrifying and most fascinating proposal she had ever heard. Why us specifically? She asked. There are other species in the galaxy with better technology, longer lifespans, more resources. Crixtal's expression softened slightly. Because you are the only species we have observed that consistently puts the welfare of children above everything else, even your own immediate interests. We have watched you humans rescue children from disasters, adopt orphans from other families, even sacrifice yourselves to protect young ones who are not your own biological offspring. He brought up holographic footage showing human emergency responders risking their lives to save children from burning buildings, teachers spending their own money to buy supplies for students, parents working multiple jobs to give their children opportunities. Other species care for their own young, Crixtal continued. But humans seem to have an instinct to protect and nurture all children, regardless of genetics or species. We believe this makes you uniquely suited to help us. Elena looked around the room at her colleagues. The military officials still looked skeptical, but she could see that Dr. Chan and some of the other child development experts were intrigued. This would be an unprecedented responsibility, Elena said. Raising children from another species, especially one as powerful as yours. How do we know we wouldn't accidentally harm them by not understanding their needs? We would provide detailed information about Vorthack biology and development, Crixtal promised, and we would maintain regular contact to ensure their well-being. But the day-to-day care, the emotional support, the guidance they need to grow into healthy adults, these things we cannot do. Our own biology works against us. General Morrison asked the hard question. What's to stop these children from growing up, returning to your people, and then turning around to conquer Earth? We'd essentially be training our own future enemies. Crixtal was quiet for a long moment. Nothing, he said honestly. You would have to trust us. Just as we are asking you to trust us with the most precious thing we have, our children. The human leadership team called for a recess to discuss Crixtal's proposal. While the Vorthack general waited in a separate room, Elena found herself in the middle of the most intense debate of her career. It's insane, General Morrison was saying. We're talking about raising future super soldiers who could destroy us all. But they're children, Dr. Chen argued. Children who will die if we don't help them. How can we make that decision based on what they might become as adults? Ambassador Williams, Earth's lead diplomat, raised practical concerns. Even if we wanted to help, do we have the resources? 50 alien children with special needs we don't understand. Elena had been thinking about this since Crixtal first made his proposal. Actually, 50 isn't that many children spread across the entire human population. We could place them with specially selected families, provide extensive support and training, create a network of care that ensures they get everything they need. And what do we get out of it? Asked Dr. Rodriguez from the Science Division. Besides potentially saving a species from extinction? Knowledge, Elena replied immediately. This would be the greatest interspecies cooperation project in human history. What we could learn about biology, psychology, cultural development, not to mention the potential for future peaceful relations with the galaxy's most powerful military force. General Morrison shook his head. You're all thinking like scientists and social workers. I'm thinking like someone who has to protect humanity. These aren't just alien children, they're Vorthak children. Even if they grow up peaceful, their biology makes them living weapons. Dr. Chun pulled up files on her tablet. I've been reviewing the data Krixtal provided about Vorthak development. Did you know that young Vorthak actually have more advanced emotional and social capabilities than adults? Their biology doesn't just allow for empathy and bonding, it requires it for healthy development. What do you mean? Elena asked. Vorthak children who don't receive affection and emotional support during their first 10 years develop severe psychological problems. Aggression, inability to form relationships, even physical health issues. The Vorthak have been essentially torturing their own children for generations, thinking it makes them stronger. Elena felt a chill. So the most dangerous thing we could do is raise them the way the Vorthak do. Exactly. If we raise them with love and proper care, they'll be psychologically healthy. If we don't. Dr. Chun trailed off, but the implication was clear. Ambassador Williams raised another concern. What about the political implications? When the rest of the galaxy finds out that humans are raising Vorthak children, how will that affect our relationships with other species? It could go either way, Elena admitted. Some species might see it as a sign that humans are trustworthy and compassionate. Others might worry that we're creating an alliance with the galaxy's most feared warriors. The debate continued for hours. Elena found herself thinking not just about the political and practical implications, but about the children themselves. 50 young beings who would die without help, who had never experienced the kind of love and care that human children took for granted. Finally, she stood up. I think we're overcomplicating this, she said. The room fell quiet, and everyone turned to look at her. Yes, there are risks, Elena continued. Yes, there are unknowns. But at the core, this is simple. There are children who need help, and we have the ability to help them. Everything else, the politics, the future implications, the potential benefits, all of that is secondary. You really think it's that simple? General Morrison asked. Elena nodded. I think that's what makes us human. When we see children in need, we help them. It's not always smart, it's not always safe, but it's who we are. Dr. Chun smiled. I agree. This is exactly the kind of thing that makes humans unique in the galaxy. Other species might calculate the risks and benefits, but we're the ones who would take in orphans from another species just because they need help. All right, Ambassador Williams said finally. Let's say we agree to this. How do we make it work? 2 hours later, the human delegation returned to the conference room where Krixtal waited. Elena could see the tension in his massive frame. This was clearly the most important moment in his species' history. General Krixtal, she began. We've made our decision. The Vorthak warrior leaned forward slightly, his yellow eyes fixed on her face. We'll do it, Elena said simply. Krixtal went completely still for several seconds. Then, to Elena's amazement, she saw his eyes fill with what looked suspiciously like tears. You will help our children? He asked, his voice rougher than before. Yes, Dr. Chun confirmed. But we have conditions. Krixtal nodded quickly. Anything. Name your terms. First, Elena said, we need complete medical and psychological profiles of each child, plus detailed information about Vorthak biology and development. We can't help them if we don't understand their needs. Agreed. Second, we want regular contact between the children and Vorthak adults, not for training or testing, but so they don't lose touch with their own culture and identity. Of course. Third, General Morrison added, we need guarantees about the future. These children will grow up as part of human families. Earth will be their home. We need assurance that the Vorthak Empire won't demand their return for military service or try to use them against humanity. Krixtal considered this carefully. I can promise that any child raised by humans will have the choice to remain on Earth or return to Vorthak space when they reach adulthood. We will not force them to become warriors if they choose a different path. And fourth, Dr. Chan said, we want Vorthak adults to learn from this process. We'll document everything we do, share our methods, teach your people how to care for future generations. This can't be a one-time solution. You need to develop your own capacity for nurturing children. Elena saw something change in Crickstal's expression. Hope, maybe, or relief. You would teach us to be better parents? He asked. If you're willing to learn, Elena replied. This isn't just about saving 50 children. It's about saving your entire species for the long term. Crickstal stood up slowly, and Elena was reminded again of just how massive and powerful he was. But when he spoke, his voice was gentle. Dr. Vasquez, members of the Human Council, you are offering us something more precious than all the conquered worlds in our empire. You are offering our children a future. He paused, struggling with emotions that his warrior culture had taught him to suppress. I must ask one more thing, he said finally. May I meet the humans who will care for our young? I know it is not the Vortak way to show attachment to children, but these 50 are all that remain of our most recent generation. I would like to know they will be in good hands. Elena smiled. General, you're about to meet some of the most dedicated parents, teachers, and caregivers on Earth. I think you'll find that your children will be very much loved. 3 weeks later, Elena stood in a large conference room at the International Children's Services headquarters, watching an unprecedented scene unfold. 50 carefully selected human families had gathered to meet the Vortak children they would be caring for, and the room buzzed with nervous excitement. The families came from all over Earth, teachers and doctors, farmers and engineers, young couples and older parents whose own children had grown up. What they all had in common was extensive experience with children and a willingness to take on one of the most challenging parenting assignments in human history. Are you sure about this? Asked David Chun, no relation to Dr. Sarah Chun, a high school biology teacher whose family had volunteered to care for one of the Vortak children. I mean, we've raised 3 human kids, but this is different, finished his wife Maria, a pediatric nurse. But children are children regardless of species. They need love, structure, patience, and someone who believes in them. Elena had heard similar conversations throughout the room. These weren't naive volunteers. They all understood the challenges they were taking on. But they had all reached the same conclusion. These were children who needed help, and they had the ability to provide it. General Crickstal entered the room with Subcommander Zephyr and 2 other Vortak officers. The human families fell silent as the massive warriors walked in, but Elena was pleased to see that no one looked terrified. Curious, respectful, maybe a little awed, but not afraid. Humans of Earth, Crickstal announced, his voice carrying easily across the room. I cannot find words to express our gratitude for what you are about to do. He gestured, and a section of the wall slid open to reveal the 50 young Vortak. Elena felt her breath catch as she saw them for the first time. They were nothing like she had expected. The Vortak children were about the size of human 10-year-olds. But their proportions were different: broader shoulders, longer limbs, and the distinctive armored skin that would grow thicker as they matured. But what struck Elena most was their faces. They had the same yellow eyes as the adults, but without the hardness. Instead, she saw curiosity, uncertainty, and something that looked like hope. These are not the fierce young warriors you might expect, Crickstal said, and Elena could hear affection in his voice that he was probably supposed to suppress. They are simply children who have never known gentleness or safety. They are frightened, confused, and desperately in need of what you can provide. One of the young Vortak stepped forward hesitantly. She was smaller than the others, with lighter purple skin and what looked like curiosity overcoming her fear. Are you the humans who will take care of us? She asked, her voice high and clear. Maria Chun stepped forward without hesitation. Yes, sweetheart. We're here to make sure you have families who love you. The young Vortak tilted her head, processing this. What is love? Elena felt her heart break a little. These children had literally never experienced parental affection. Love is what makes parents want to protect their children, Maria explained gently. It's what makes us happy when you're happy, and worried when you're hurt. It's why we'll teach you things and help you grow, not because we have to, but because we want to. The young Vortak looked back at General Crickstal, confusion clear on her face. Is love why my gene sire brought us here? Because he was worried we were hurt. Crixtal froze. Elena realized that this child had just asked him to admit to an emotion that Vortak culture considered weakness. But instead of deflecting or getting angry, Crixtal knelt down so he was closer to the child's eye level. "Yes, little one," he said quietly. "That is exactly why." Elena saw several of the human parents exchange glances. They were beginning to understand that Vortak adults weren't incapable of love. They had just been taught to suppress it so thoroughly that they couldn't access it when their children needed it. "The matching process will take several days," Elena announced. "We want to make sure each child is placed with a family that's the right fit for their personality and needs. But I want everyone to know that this is just the beginning. We're creating a support network that will help both the children and their families throughout this process." Over the next few hours, Elena watched as humans and young Vortak began cautiously interacting. The children were clearly hungry for attention and affection, but they didn't know how to ask for it. The human parents, meanwhile, were adapting their approaches, learning to read alien body language and respond to unfamiliar needs. "Look at that," Dr. Chun said quietly, pointing to one corner of the room. Elena looked and saw Tom Bradley, a widowed father of 2 grown children, sitting on the floor with 3 young Vortak gathered around him. He was showing them pictures on his tablet, photos of his own children when they were young, his grandchildren, family pets. "This is what human families look like," he was explaining patiently. "We live together, we eat meals together, we play games and tell stories. When someone is sad, we comfort them. When someone is happy, we celebrate with them." One of the young Vortak raised a clawed hand hesitantly. "What if we make mistakes? What if we break things or don't understand the rules?" Tom smiled. "Then we help you learn from the mistake and try again. That's what parents do. We don't give up on our children just because they're still learning." Elena realized she was watching the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. An entire species learning to be vulnerable, to trust, to accept help from those they could easily. 6 months later, Elena sat in her office reviewing reports from the Vortak integration project. The results were beyond anything they had hoped for. Dr. Chun knocked on her door and entered with a stack of files. "You need to see the latest psychological evaluations," she said, unable to hide her excitement. Elena looked at the summary data and felt her eyebrows rise. "These numbers can't be right." "They are. The Vortak children are showing emotional and social development rates that exceed normal human child development in several areas. They're not just surviving in human families, they're thriving." Elena flipped through individual case studies. Young Keth V.A., placed with the Martinez family in Mexico, had learned Spanish and was helping teach other children about Vortak culture at her school. Zor Kim, living with the Andersons in Minnesota, had discovered a talent for music and was learning to play piano with his clawed hands. Velare, the small female who had asked about love at the first meeting, was now living with Maria and David Chun and had just been elected class representative at her elementary school. "What about behavioral issues?" Elena asked. "Any problems with their increased strength or natural weapons?" "That's the remarkable part," Dr. Chun replied. "We've had almost no incidents. A few accidents early on when they didn't realize their own strength, but once they learned to be careful, they've been incredibly responsible. It's like they're naturally inclined to protect smaller, weaker beings." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense if you think about it. In the wild, adult Vortak would need to be careful around their own young. The protective instinct is probably built into their biology." "There's something else," Dr. Chun said, pulling out a different set of files. "We're starting to see changes in the Vortak adults too." She showed Elena footage from the monthly video calls between the children and their birth families. In the early calls, the adult Vortak had been stiff and formal, treating the interactions like military briefings. But over time, Elena could see them becoming more engaged, asking questions about the children's daily lives, even showing what looked like pride when the children demonstrated new skills. "General Crixtal has been particularly interesting to watch," Dr. Chun continued. "He started out trying to maintain warrior protocols during the calls, but now he asks the children about their friends, their favorite foods, their dreams for the future." Elena smiled. "The children are teaching the adults how to be parents." "Exactly, and it's working both ways. The human families are learning to appreciate Vorthack culture, their emphasis on honor, their deep loyalty, their incredible dedication once they commit to something. A chime from Elena's computer indicated an incoming transmission. She looked at the screen and saw General Crickstal's familiar form. "Dr. Vasquez," he said. "I hope I am not interrupting important work." "Not at all, General. What can I do for you?" Crickstal looked different than he had 6 months ago. The rigid warrior posture was still there, but his expression was softer, more open. "I wanted to share news," he said. "The Vorthack High Command has made a decision about future generations." Elena felt her stomach tighten. "What kind of decision?" "We want to implement the human child-rearing methods for all Vorthack young," Crickstal replied. "We have seen the reports. We have watched our children grow and flourish under human care. We want to learn these methods so we can provide the same nurturing environment for future generations." Elena felt relief wash over her. "That's wonderful news, General." "There is more," Crickstal continued. "We would like to request that some human families consider permanent relocation to Vorthack space to help establish child care centers and train our adults in proper nurturing techniques." Elena exchanged a glance with Dr. Chun. This was moving faster than anyone had expected. "That's a significant request," Elena said carefully. "It would mean human families leaving Earth permanently to live in Vorthack territory." "We understand the magnitude of what we ask," Crickstal replied. "But we have come to realize that the survival of our species depends not just on military strength, but on our ability to care for our young. You have shown us what we were missing." Dr. Chun leaned forward. "General, what about the other Vorthack leaders? Are they all supportive of these changes?" Crickstal's expression darkened slightly. "Most of the High Command supports the new approach. However, war leader Grokma and his faction still oppose what they call the softening of the Vorthack spirit. They believe that showing affection to children will make our entire species weak." "What does that mean for the children currently on Earth?" Elena asked, suddenly worried. "It means we must move carefully," Crickstal replied. "But it also means that your work is more important than ever. These 50 children represent the future of our species. If they grow up to be strong, capable adults who are also emotionally healthy, it will prove that love does not create weakness. It creates a different kind of strength." Elena's concerns about the opposition faction proved justified when, 3 months later, she received an urgent transmission from General Crickstal. "Dr. Vasquez," he said, his image flickering on the screen. "We have a problem. War leader Grokma has demanded that the children be returned immediately for proper Vorthack training." Elena felt her blood run cold. "What kind of authority does he have?" "As a war leader, he can challenge my decisions through the Combat Council. If he defeats me in ritual combat, he gains the right to determine the fate of the children." "And if you refuse the challenge?" Crickstal's expression was grim. "Then I am branded a coward, stripped of rank, and he gets the children anyway." Elena thought quickly. "When is this combat supposed to take place?" "In 72 hours. But Dr. Vasquez, there is something you must understand. Grokma is one of the finest warriors in Vorthack history. He has never lost a challenge combat. If he defeats me—" Crickstal didn't need to finish. Elena understood. If Grokma won, the children would be dragged back to the harsh traditional training that had killed so many of their predecessors. "Is there anything we can do?" Elena asked desperately. "Perhaps," Crickstal said slowly. "The combat allows for champions. I could choose a representative to fight in my place." Elena's mind raced. "You mean a human could fight for you?" "Theoretically, yes. But Dr. Vasquez, you must understand, no human could defeat Grokma in physical combat. He is 8.5 feet tall, weighs over 400 pounds, and has reflexes faster than your quickest athletes. It would be suicide." Elena was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then an idea began to form. "General, what are the exact rules for challenge combat?" "The challenger and defender fight until one yields or is unable to continue. Any weapons or methods are allowed, as long as both parties agree to the terms." "And Grokma gets to choose the terms since he's the challenger?" "Correct. Elena smiled grimly. Then I think we need to have a conversation with our Vorthack children. 48 hours later, Elena stood on.